So I'm trying to actually understand, well, why aren't we trying to get to a place where every single thing that happens to us, we can instantaneously diffuse it? Doesn't matter how bad it is. I mean, just to go to an extreme example, a loved person could die, something could happen, you could lose your business. But if you can get to an almost kind of Zen-like state where everything just is and everything is okay, surely that is going to set you up to become a better version of yourself along the line. So why aren't we just encouraging people to, for lack of a better term, get over it, suck it up?
Okay, so if we were mates and we've never met other than, and I'm sure if you live down the road or I live down the road from you, we would be mates. And if you were going through some shit, I would go, listen, champ, suck it up, right? And I'd go, suck it up. These are the reasons why. And you would probably respond positively. If you were another person, I'd say, suck it up. You'd get offended. You'd spiral and you might be hurt and you might not want to talk to me again. And that doesn't mean that that person's bad or wrong and you're good and right. It doesn't mean that. It just means that everyone responds individually. And when you talk about you and your partner going through the same thing, like you don't actually go through the same experience. You go through the same, what seems to be experience, the same event, situation, circumstance, but you each have a personal experience that is different. And that's because of all the things that we spoke about. But the main answer to your question is fear. And so what we know is that you can, okay, let me personalize this so people might understand a practical example. So I can walk up to do a gig where I've got lots of people in a room. I talk at least twice a week to a corporate audience, and I've done that for a very long time. But I can still walk up and I'll be standing at the side of the room and someone's introducing me to come up and speak, and I've got evidence, I've got data to support the fact that I'm not terrible at this, I can do it. I've been to this company before, they're paying me to come back. There's some insight in that. But nonetheless, there's something in me that's going, you're shit, you're going to crash and burn, you've just been lucky, and this is the day, right? So you can simultaneously intellectually know that you're safe and that you're okay while feeling inadequate. So I think that when you're talking to somebody, you have to, it's not just about logic, it's also about what emotional state are they in and understanding their version of right now, which is literally all the research in my PhD, which is a thing called metaperception. And, theory of mind is understanding someone else's reality in this moment.
Okay, I'd love to dig into that a little bit more because the fear piece is super interesting, right? Because fear primarily is and you're doing the PhD, so I might say things that are wrong, and feel free to tell me that I'm that I'm wrong.
I actually think you have a pretty good intuitive understanding of all this, mate. And it's probably better that we leave out all the academic jargon and you just share, because you're probably going to be on the money.
Okay, so in my experience and kind of my worldview, fear is a response that's triggered primarily by your amygdala, which is there to keep you safe, which has been an evolutionary type thing. We have a significantly higher bias towards things being potentially deadly to us because the downside risk of a rustle in the bushes when we're back in the plains of Africa evolving, the downside of that being a tiger versus it being something nice, stimulates you to run to save your life. So there's more upside in being freaked out than there is by being brave, broadly speaking. The problem with that is that we have all this different stimulus which triggers our amygdala at all of these random various things which cause us to think things are worse than they are. And there's loads of different research on this, prospect theory, and there's been, loads of real good academic research on it. And it's somewhere between 2 times and 10 times greater bias towards things being, deadly than being positive. That's the kind of general kind of frame of bias. So if we understand that our brain is effectively lying to us most of the time and making things to seem worse than they are most of the time, based on your research, study, academic pursuit in neuropsychology, how can we what are some practical tips, strategies, or guidance that you might have in how to kind of get over that physiological trigger? Because it seems like we've got something in there that is causing us to be biased in the wrong way. How can we get over that to at least get to a baseline of equilibrium?
Well, that's the hardest question last me today. Thanks for that. So you're right. I mean, our brain has evolved over 300,000 years to be a threat detection tool, and the amygdala specifically, which is the emotional epicenter of the brain, specifically, that's, it's integrated. And you're right, is that we default to catastrophe way more than we go, oh, that's, I had a guy on my show recently called Paul Taylor, who's also, similar to me in the research space and doing all that. And he shared a figure, I can't remember the citation, but that 96% of the things that we worry about don't happen, right? And even when they do happen, the 4% of the time, generally it's not nearly as bad as we think, So the bottom line is we waste an incredible amount of time and energy worrying about things that will never eventuate. We also waste a lot of time in the now, like right now, this moment in time, as your listeners hear this, obsessing or worrying about or wasting energy on things that happened previously, historically, that we can't change, or potential problems that might happen in the future, which is actually hijacking us in the now. So in the now. And the answer to your question is, I think sometimes, if I'm worried about something or I feel that, that anxiety or that whatever rise up, that physiological kind of stress, I'll hit the pause button. I'll go, all right, what's this about? Like, what am I actually scared of? So rather than letting it run the show, this is really an exercise in self-awareness and self-regulation, is to go, what is this about? What's my fear? Where's it coming from? Is this logical? Is this illogical? And quite often you can figure it out. You go, okay, I'm scared or I'm anxious and I understand why. Like I'll give you for example, my mum, God bless her, she stacked her car 6 weeks ago, little Suzuki Swift that I bought her a few years ago, totaled the car, broke 6 ribs. She's been driving for 83, still cognitively fine, physically fine. I bought her a new car. I drove it up the other day and went ta-da, and she's like, oh my God. And I sat her in the car and I said, let's just go for a drive. I sat in the passenger seat. Well, she almost couldn't back out of the drive. So the woman that's been driving for over 60 years and, has driven the same car in the, like she was so overwhelmed with what happened last time that was even though she was safe, even though there was no problem, even though we were going to go for a quiet drive on a quiet street in the country where she lives, her brain was hijacking her physiology to the point where she almost couldn't bloody put her foot on the accelerator, right? And so we just hit the button and I said, turn off the car for a sec. And I just spoke to her and I said, this is what's going on. I said, it's completely normal. You're not doing anything wrong. You're not weak. You're not broken. And I just walked her through what's happening with her nervous system and why. I said, well, the last time you were behind the steering wheel, you nearly got killed. So of course you feel this way. But now is not then. Now, me walking through this with her doesn't necessarily fix it, but it gives her a bit of an insight into what's going on.